All right. Hello and welcome everyone to our office hours webinar for today. We are so glad that you could be joining us. My name is Stephanie and I am one of the customer delight specialists here at Posit Science, and I will be one of your co-hosts for today's webinar. Now, our goal for the office hours webinar series, maybe if you're new here, is to show off a specific feature or two within BrainHQ, and then we will open the floor and answer any questions that you might have about those features. Now, today's topic is a highly requested one, so much so, in fact, that we are doing it a second time. We are going to be doing a deep dive into progress within BrainHQ. So Henry is going to be joining me, and he and I will go ahead and walk you through the different metrics available within BrainHQ, and then we'll go ahead and pivot to taking questions from you all. So if at any point you'd like to ask a question about progress, you can click the little Q&A button on the Zoom control panel, and a window will pop up where you can type in your questions. Now, there are a lot more of you than there are me and Henry, so we aren't likely going to be able to answer every question live today, but you can also send any follow-up questions to our support team at support@brainhq.com. They are waiting to answer those questions about progress for you, and they're eager to help you out. We also have a support site, which you can find at support.brainhq.com, that will have answers to a lot of common questions, and we have a whole section on that site dedicated to understanding progress. Now, the last thing that I wanted to mention is that today's webinar is being recorded and it will get posted to our YouTube channel probably sometime next week. If you'd like to be notified when that video goes live, you can go to youtube.com/brainhq and subscribe there in order to receive a notification when that video goes up. All right, so a little bit about me real quick. So once again, my name is Stephanie. Hello. Before working at Posit Science, I was a science communicator and docent at a science museum here in San Francisco. In 2014, I started working for Posit Science as a customer delight specialist. Now there are a couple more hats that I'm wearing now than I was when I first started almost 9 years ago now, but I'm still answering questions from users like you all pretty much every day. Now, my co-host today is also no stranger to the webinar scene. Joining me is Dr. Henry Monka. Henry, you want to say hi?
Hi, folks, and hi, Stephanie. I'm delighted to be hosting this with you today, and everyone, thanks for coming.
Yeah. So for those of you who have not met Henry yet, Henry earned his PhD in neuroscience at the University of California, San Francisco, and that's where he studied brain plasticity with our co-founder, Dr. Michael Merzenich. He has been running the show here at Posit Science as our CEO since 2011. So he and I are going to be jumping back and forth and tag teaming questions about progress that you'll have throughout the webinar today. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. Let me go ahead and switch over to my demonstration window here. Henry was generous enough to donate his account for the webinar today. Let's take a step back here. What do we mean by progress in the context of BrainHQ? Generally, we mean an improvement over time. You know, you started here, you did some training, and then your scores ended up here. Now, there are a lot of different ways to track progress within BrainHQ, and we are going to be focusing on 4 different ways to track your progress today. Now, first, you can track your progress within suites and exercises using a feature called medals and also level tiles. You can use these to quickly see how many levels you've completed per exercise, how well you've scored across them, and then what areas you still have yet to train with. After that, you can also track your overall progress using BrainHQ, which is short for Brain Activity Quotient. I'll be tossing this over to Henry so that way he can talk about the science and design principles behind this progress feature. You can also track your progress using percentile scores. Percentiles aren't going to be for everybody, but if you are the kind of person who likes to see how you're doing compared to others, then this might be a metric you're interested in learning more about. And then finally, you're also going to see information about progress tiles after you've completed some training. So this is a great way to get feedback on your training throughout the course of the week. All right, so let's go ahead and start by talking about medals. So you can get a quick overview of your progress within each category and also within each exercise by looking at medals. Now, medals are awards that BrainHQ will give you based on how many levels within a stage you've completed. And then your average score across all of those levels will determine what kind of medal you earn. As you can guess, there are going to be gold medals, silver medals, and bronze medals available to earn. So let's see what that looks like. What I'm going to do here is click on Explore All Exercises. And then that's going to take us to a level selection screen. This screen is going to have all of the all of the exercises within BrainHQ, and they are all color-coded by category. So we can see all of the attention exercises are green, all of the brain speed exercises are blue, so on and so forth. Now, if you look here up at the top of the screen, we also have a section called medals by category. So as you train with BrainHQ and earn medals, these circles are gradually going to start to fill in. Now, you can use this feature to guide your training. You can look for categories with blank spaces because that means that there are new stages and levels for you to work on. Or, if your circles are filled in and you've already done a lot of training, you can gradually work on improving your scores and improve the type of medal that you've earned so far. Now we can see here, Henry has done a lot of work in the brain speed category since the circle is mostly filled in. And we can see at the other end over here, there's a lot of opportunity for training in the people skills category.
Oh, Stephanie, what are you trying to say about me?
Look,
yes,
nothing yet. Just that there's opportunities here for you, Henry.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, so if we actually wanted to take a closer look at what exercises within people skills Henry has done training with so far, we can go ahead and actually click on that circle and it will scroll us right down to that category. So from here, I want to point out the sort of loading bars that you can see on each of these exercise tiles. And then there are numbers kind of small to see. I'll zoom in a little bit here. There are numbers at the bottom of these exercise tiles as well. So the numbers at the bottom indicate how many stages you've completed and then how many stages total there are. So we can see, for example, for in the know, Henry has completed 1 stage out of 3 available stages and has earned a silver medal. That's what this sort of silver color on this loading bar indicates. For recognition, he's earned 1 bronze medal out of 4 available stages, and that's what the sort of bronze color is here for. So that could be a quick way for you to figure out what areas you haven't quite done a lot of training in yet, and then use that to guide your training if you'd like to do your training that way. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom back to normal here and go to the brain speed category. So I want to take a look at the Hawkeye exercise in particular for this demonstration. Now, when I click on it, it's going to give me this page with a bunch of science behind the exercise, how it was developed, but I'm going to go ahead and gloss over that for now and take you to our level selection screen for Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye has a lot of levels and a lot of stages. Don't let that overwhelm you. I'm going to walk you through everything on this page. So as a refresher, just to provide some context for the scoring on this page, Hawkeye is a brain speed exercise where a flock of birds appear on screen for a brief amount of time and then disappear. And one of those birds in the flock is going to look different from the others. So your task in Hawkeye is to identify the target bird. And then ideally, as you progress within a level, the birds are going to appear on screen for shorter and shorter amounts of time. Now, each of these tiles or each of these squares or boxes represents a specific level of Hawkeye, and each of these levels is going to be slightly different. So for example, in this first level, there are going to be orange birds against a simple blue background, and then the birds are going to be huddled close together near the middle of the screen. In the second level of Hawkeye here in stage 1, the birds in the background are going to be the same, but the location of the birds is going to be different. Instead of them being close to the center of the screen, they are going to be out towards the periphery. So that's one of the ways that the exercise can become more challenging in order to drive that plasticity in your training. Now, when it comes to interpreting your progress from this selection screen, medals are really handy because they sort of provide us with a 2-pronged approach, if you will. So we want to see that you are opening more levels, you're getting a wider breadth of training, and then we can also see at a glance how your performance is increasing. We want to see you earning stars and deepening your understanding and training with those levels. So we can see here next to each of the stages that there are medal icons. So we can see stages 1 through 5 correspond to the 1 through 5 up here. But if we scroll down, we also see them under the stage numbers. 1 through 5, Henry has earned gold stars or gold medals on all of those, which is
Hey.
fantastic.
I've worked hard.
Yes. Now, gold medals mean that you've earned an average of 4.5 stars across all levels in a stage. So you're going to see a mix of 4 and 5 stars for all of those levels. If we scroll down to stage 6, we can see that he has earned a silver medal, and he is 3 stars away from earning a gold medal. If we scroll down even further from that, we see in stage 7 that he has earned a bronze medal, and he has 4 stars to reach, 4 stars to go until he reaches silver. Now, a bronze medal means that you've earned a minimum average of 2 stars across all levels in a stage, and a silver medal means that you've earned a mix of 3 to 5 stars across the stage. Now, this could be another way that Henry could look for what sorts of exercises he wants to work on or what levels he wants to work on. He could say to himself, I want to work on trying to get a silver medal, or improving this bronze medal to a silver medal, or improving this silver medal to a gold medal. So he can take a look at the exercises where maybe he isn't scoring as high and try and replay them to improve those scores. Now, one other thing to note is that you won't be awarded a medal unless all of the levels within a stage have been completed at least once. So if we scroll down to stage 9 and 10, we can see that Henry has a level that he has yet to complete here, and then 2 levels at the bottom of stage 10 here that he has yet to complete. And it says earn stars in all levels to unlock these medals. So now you can sort of begin to see how medals help track your progress. You can see how many levels you've tried. You know, if you haven't earned a medal, then that means that there are still levels that you need to train with for the first time. But you can also tell from a glance how high your performance is in each of those stages. You know, if you are getting a gold medal, then that means that you're doing really well. And if you're getting a silver or a bronze, then that means that there's some room for improvement, and you can go and work on those other levels. Now, since we're here, I want to talk about how to actually read these level tiles, because there's a lot of really valuable information about progress here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit easier to see. And I want to take a look at stage 3 for this. So there's a lot of information on these boxes here. So I want to draw your attention first to this level in the bottom right corner of the stage. So looking here, you can see that Henry has earned 5 stars for this level, which fantastic. Congratulations, Henry.
Thank you.
Now under that, we see a little bar graph that's displayed here with different colored bars. So the first time you train with a level in BrainHQ, you're going to set what's called a baseline score. Now that baseline score is going to be recorded, and you're always going to be able to see what your baseline score was from this level. Now, when Henry trained with this level for the first time, he set a baseline score of 117 milliseconds. That's this number that is in the bottom left of this tile. That number also corresponds with the first bar in this bar graph. Now we can see that Henry has repeated this level a couple more times. We see that he increased his score, didn't quite get as high the 3rd time he trained with it, and then the 4th and 5th time he trained with that level, he nailed it, and he got a high score of 50 milliseconds. So another 5-star rating there. So the number in the bottom right corner of the tile, the one that is going to be the same color as the suite that you're currently in, is going to be your high score for that exercise, or for that level, excuse me. Now, the graphs can sometimes look a little bit different. So if we look at the level right next to it, we see that there's only 1 bar in this bar graph. I don't know if you really want to call it a graph at this point, because it's just the one, but we can tell from this level that Henry has only trained with it once. He earned 5 stars and then moved on, and that's why there's only the 1 bar there.
That was good enough for me, Stephanie.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that you may see is, let's take a look at this exercise, or this level up here in the top right corner. We can see that when Henry first trained with this level, he had a score of 316 milliseconds. And then he trained and trained and trained and trained enough times that the graph can't individually show bars anymore. And he earned a high score of 178 milliseconds. But the graph doesn't stop, or the graph doesn't stop there. You can see it continue to go down, which tells us that Henry has trained with that level a couple more times, but his score has decreased since earning that high score, which is okay, still a 5-star rating. But Henry, if you wanted to go back and try and improve that score, that might be a thing that you would look out for.
All right, thanks for the advice.
Yeah. So that's how you can use these level tiles to track your progress in a very detailed way. And this is going to be available for every exercise and every level within BrainHQ. All right, I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out to our regular Zoom size here. And I'm going to head on over to the progress page where Henry is going to take over and talk about BrainHQ for a little bit here.
Super. And I'll just say a few words about that. As Stephanie indicated, those progress tiles are a great way to track your progress with medals across all the exercises. But of course, we also want to give people an overall sense of how they're doing since they've started. And that's exactly what BrainHQ does. BrainHQ, you earn BrainHQ points each time you train. And you earn points as you do a level that you've never done before. And you earn points as you improve your score on a level that you have done before. And so what that means is that as you train, your BrainHQ goes up. So why don't we scroll back just a little bit in time for me? And you can do that with the arrows here. So that's a good reason right there. For example, here, what you see underneath the graph is a calendar, and it reads in a funny direction. The top is Sunday, then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Essentially, each letter represents one day of the week. And the colored squares represent how much training you did. A dark purple square is a lot of training. Here it looks like I did 18 levels. And a light colored square, maybe I did a little bit less training. And you can see that each time that I'm training regularly, I'm increasing my BrainHQ score. However, as you earn those points, they do slowly wear off over time. And that's because, of course, learning wears off over time. Everything that we do, whether it's driving a car or practicing a musical instrument or speaking a language, all those require practice, and BrainHQ does as well. So you can see during this interval of time where I wasn't training as much, hey, my BrainHQ score slowly wore off. But great news, all it takes is some more training, as you can see there on the right, and my BrainHQ score will bounce right up again. So this is a really wonderful mechanism to just get an overall sense of, hey, if I'm improving, am I training regularly? You're going to see your BrainHQ score go up. And hey, if you've taken a break for a while, maybe you were on vacation, maybe you had friends and family, maybe you just got busy with other activities or hobbies, hey, it's slowly going to decrease, but no worries. You can just train some and bounce it back up again. And I think for a lot of users, certainly I like looking at this. This is just a nice way to keep track of, hey, am I training enough to keep my brain improving over time, or at least staying stable? And this comes from a science that scientists call cognitive reserve. We know there's a lot of things we could do to build our brain health. Obviously, brain training is one of the best ways. But hey, physical exercise, eating right, all these things are thought by scientists to build your cognitive reserve, which is basically your resistance to cognitive decline, and in fact, your resistance to dementia over time. You can think of building cognitive reserve with all those healthy activities as kind of putting gas in your tank. And then, of course, there are things that take gas out of the tank, right? The natural process of aging, a little gas out of the tank. Maybe you've had a concussion. Maybe you've had some other challenges to your brain health. All those things take gas out of the tank. But you can put gas back in the tank by all those healthy brain activities like brain training and exercising and eating right. The BrainHQ graph works exactly the same way. As you do that training, you're increasing it, showing that you have more cognitive reserve, you have more gas in the tank. And as you take breaks from training, it's going to decay a little bit, which is really just a signal to you that it's going to be time to come back soon and put some more gas in the tank by doing some more brain training. So I'll kick it back to you, Stephanie.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have these other measures here called stars earned and levels completed. We will touch on those later if you all ask about them, but the next portion that I really wanted to emphasize is this portion of the progress page called percentiles. So percentiles are basically scores that show you how your performance compares to other people using BrainHQ. And then by default, these rankings are going to be age adjusted unless otherwise noted. So the way that percentiles work is each time you complete a level, BrainHQ makes a really precise calculation of how you did relative to everybody else your age who also completed that level. Now, these are not like letter grades in school, and this is the thing that if I can drive home to everybody, because we get so many comments about that, people will write into us saying, I'm scoring at the 50th percentile, I'm failing BrainHQ, and that's not at all the case. So if you're scoring at the 50th percentile, then that means you're right in the middle. You're doing average. You were doing as well as half your peers, and you were scoring, you were scoring equal to or better than 50% of all users your age that have completed those levels. So that is my main takeaway. It is not the same thing as letter grades in school. 50% or 60% is in a D or F. It means that you are right in the middle.
Are you telling me, Stephanie, that when I see myself there and I see a 67 in memory, I'm not getting a D in memory, but I'm actually doing okay?
You are doing fantastic, Henry. I never want you to think that seeing a low number in your percentile section means that you are doing poorly. So for example, also, we can see over here, his overall percentile is the 75th percentile. So that means that if you were to line up Henry and 98 other BrainHQ users that were born the same year as him, his performance is going to be higher than 74 of them, and then lower than 25 of them. So as Henry pointed out, we can see in the percentile overview section, your overall percentile, but also a breakout by various categories. Now the number to the right of that after the plus sign is going to show you your improvement over your baseline scores. So we can see that Henry on average has improved 18 ranks or improved 18 percentile points since training with those baseline scores. Now we can also see that he is scoring the highest in navigation. He's at the 91st percentile, which is fantastic, much better than me. But we can also see that he's made the greatest gains in the people skills category. So we can see that he's gained 35 ranks over his baseline scores. So that's a great, yeah, so that you can use that as a tool to figure out sort of what areas you maybe want to start working on a little bit more. Now, the other thing that I want to draw your attention to, which is pretty easy to see, is this giant color wheel on the right side of the page here. So the inside track of this wheel is going to show you the same information that you're going to see in the percentile overview. If you hover over this green wedge, it'll show you your overall percentile for all attention exercises up here. Blue will show you brain speed, pink memory, so on and so forth, again with the color coding. Now, what you can do is on the outside track, you see the average percentile for all levels within a specific exercise. So one thing that you can do, similar to the AQ graph, the more training you've done and the higher your rank, the darker the color is going to be. So what you can do is maybe find a little wedge that is a little bit lighter in color, see what that percentile is, and then if you click on it, it will go ahead and take you to the next available level that BrainHQ thinks that you have the most room for improvement on. So that is another sort of tool to guide your training if you're interested in trying to increase your scores overall. All right, and I think the last thing that we wanted to hit on today before switching to Q&A is progress tiles found on the training page here. Henry, go ahead and take that away.
Yeah, so each time you train in BrainHQ, whether you're picking your own exercises or whether you're doing the personal trainer, when you come back to your dashboard, which you can always do like Stephanie did just by clicking on where it says BrainHQ on the top, it's going to show you, hey, how much progress have you made today? And let's just walk through each of these tiles and talk about what they mean. The first one on the left tells you what your goal for the week is. And sometimes your goal for the week is to just train a certain number of levels. Many people are supposed to train 24 levels per week. But on many weeks, BrainHQ gives you a special challenge. And actually this week, the weekly challenge is to do an exercise in each category to try and mix up your training a little bit. And so what you can see on this progress tile is I so far have done 1 out of 6 of the categories. I trained on a navigation exercise this morning. And as I work my way through the challenge, you'll see that ring fill up. And if I achieve the challenge this week, then hey, I'll get a badge and earn a reward. Now, to the right of that, it says +1 passed. And what that means is how many levels have I passed today? So this morning, I did a single level of mental map, as you can see by that yellow square underneath where it says mental map. And since I finished that level, I get 1 level passed. And to be clear, what this means is not how many times did I repeat the level, but how many individual unique levels did I do? And I just did that one. You can see up above that, I've done 556 total in all of my career at BrainHQ. I've got a few more to go, but it's nice to see the total that I've gotten to. And then if we click on moments, moments represent special events that happen to you in BrainHQ. It's BrainHQ's way of celebrating it, like a big achievement that you've made. And you see today, I got a little lucky in that mental map level that I did. I actually scored in the top 1% of all users on that one. So that's pretty good. If 100 people were out there, I would have been right up there at the very top. It's a little unfair. I've worked on this exercise quite a lot. But there's lots of special moments you can earn. You can earn moments for milestones and levels and stars. You can earn streaks for the numbers of days you've trained. There are a lot of special things that can happen in BrainHQ, and this is a way to celebrate their progress you've made in that. Finally, if we click on stars, you'll see that I earned 10 stars today. I earned them all in the navigation suite. You can see that big yellow bar down there where it says 10. That's because I was training on the mental map exercise in the navigation suite. And then on the far right, you can see I've added 2 levels. And you can see it says +2. Those are the 2 levels that I've earned. And underneath that, you can see it says 2 out of 36, because my level goal for this week is to get to 36 levels total. I've done 2. I've got some more to go for this week. And just to make sure we're clear how this works, I did 1 individual level. I did that level in mental map, but I repeated it 2 times to get to my high score. So that's why you see the +2 levels here. You can also see down there at the bottom, my total levels trained is 1,782. So that's quite a lot. Although I know there are BrainHQ users out there who've done even more than that. And my best streak is I trained 16 days in a row once, which is very cool. And I'd like to try and achieve that again someday soon. So these progress tiles you'll see on this dashboard every time you're finished training. And I think they're just a great way to keep track of the progress you've made today. Now, if you don't see these, in the upper left, there's a little icon that looks kind of like a bar graph. And if you click on that, it toggles back and forth between 2 views. Usually when you start BrainHQ, you'll see this one, and this kind of tells you what you're supposed to do. And actually for this week, it tells me about my weekly challenge, which is to do an exercise in each category. And you can swap to the other view by clicking on that graph icon, and it will show you the progress you've made so far today. And you can see these on the web. You can also see them on your mobile device, your iPhone, your Android tablet. And again, just a wonderful way to keep track of how you're doing today. So I think with that, we have demonstrated the main progress features, haven't we?
Yeah, I would say so. So I think now would be a good time as any to go ahead and switch to taking questions from the audience. It looks like we have quite a few already lined up.
Perfect.
All right, so this is going to be, I'm just now starting to look at these, so let's go ahead and pull a couple.
All right, well, I'll look at them too, and we'll see if we have some good ones.
Yeah.
Here's a good one just about metal, Stephanie. Darlene asks us, what are the colors in the circles of the metals? What does the black mean? Do you want to swap back to the exercise screen and we'll answer that?
Yeah, for sure. So I think Darlene was probably talking about the metals by category up here at the exercise selection screen. So we talked about the different kinds of metals that you can earn, the gold medals, the silver medals, and the bronze medals. And a black space indicates that there are stages that you have not completed and earned a medal for. So that's what the black space indicates here. And the size of the wedge roughly correlates to how many medals you have earned of a specific type. So we can see half the medals that Henry has earned in the brain speed category have been gold. A little more than a quarter of them have been silver, and then a little sliver of them, he has a couple of bronze there too. So the colors all sort of correlate in that way.
Yep. That's exactly right. So what that black space means is I've got a little bit of work to do to earn some medals in those areas. And that helps me pick some brain speed exercises so I know to do that. And then to be very specific, Stephanie, if you look down at brain speed, you'll see that, hey, I definitely have some black space in that fine tuning. I could go and earn some medals there. And maybe a little bit in Hawkeye. I guess I remember those 2 top stages that I could earn medals in. So a nice way to select.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's see. Thank you, Darlene, for the question. I know you're a repeat webinar attendee, so thank you for being here.
Here's a great one for Eleanor that I can see. Shall I ask this one?
Sure.
Eleanor asks us, what does it mean if you train and your BrainHQ goes down and not up?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different reasons that may happen. We sometimes see that with long time, what we call power users of BrainHQ, people who've been training, for 30, 40 minutes a day for the last 2 years, and they have these really unbelievably high AQ scores. Now, what happens, as Henry had sort of mentioned, is when you train with BrainHQ, you get a certain number of activity quotient points per day based on how much training you do and how intense the training is. Now, every day you also lose a set amount of points. This is called your BrainHQ decay. And that's supposed to sort of just represent the little bit of progress that you lose over time since you haven't been practicing. Now, for power users, we can sometimes see, even though they're training a lot per day, their
Well,
AQ
just
may
before we
still.
talk about power users, let's just make sure we hit on that one. And then, I'll just add to what you said that, hey, if your brain AQ goes down a little bit, even though you've trained, as Stephanie's getting at, just train some more and that'll bounce it back up. And that's because those points wear off before you've started training today, and you are sort of making progress against maybe a little bit of wear off that's happened from training that you originally did months ago. And that's the most common thing that happens. And so we just encourage you to use that as a way to think, okay, maybe I should train an extra level or two today. But of course, you're right, Stephanie. Sometimes people, and you should carry on. What happens to people sometimes if they've done an enormous amount of BrainHQ training?
Yeah, if they've done an enormous amount of BrainHQ training, it's like trying to keep a living repertoire of music in your brain. For example, if you're a professional musician, you're likely to forget some of the pieces, or maybe you aren't as sharp with some of the pieces. And so the BrainHQ decay kind of works in the same way. It shows that sort of decline, that sort of loss of the sort of wear that comes from not powering through a bunch more BrainHQ. And that can be kind of difficult for some users because, you're doing all this training and you see your AQ go down. So there are a couple of suggestions for what to do in that sort of scenario. I know one thing that I usually recommend doing is that if you've done a ton of training and you've been very, very diligent about your training, it's okay to actually take a break and then come back and do some booster training with BrainHQ later. There have been studies that have shown that taking a break from BrainHQ and coming back, you're still going to be able to pick up roughly where you had left off and get that booster training in, and you're still going to see benefits from that training for years to come. Henry, I think you also had a different recommendation for these sort of power users, and that, like you alluded to, was to try and do even more training, or try and increase those star counts or your scores for those levels that you maybe haven't scored 5 stars on, for example. So trying to dig deeper and do a more sort of deep dive on those levels and increase your performance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If you've been training quite a lot on BrainHQ and you see your BrainHQ going down, that's actually probably more an issue with the calculation of BrainHQ. But what we'd recommend is to come look at your medals, exactly like Stephanie is showing right now, and hey, work on the levels where maybe you haven't earned a medal at all yet, or work on the levels where you'd like to go from a bronze to a silver. That's a great way to pick training, and it can be a great way to keep up your BrainHQ. All right.
Yeah, so very long, convoluted answer, but hopefully that answers most of your questions about AQ.
Yep. Here's another good one, Stephanie, that I'm just scrolling through here. I see Tracy asks us, are the exercises in order of difficulty? For example, is Hawkeye easier than fine tuning?
Ooh, that is an interesting question.
I could take a swing at it first, or no, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and take a swing at it. I have an idea, but I'm not entirely certain.
No, it's a great question. No, the exercises are not particularly in order of difficulty. I would say that they are maybe in order of how easy they are simply to learn. So, for example, if we look at the attention suite, for example, target tracker is on the left because I think that's one of the easier attention exercises to learn how to do, to track those bubbles and so forth. And as you go to the right, learning how to do mixed signals, it's a more complex exercise. If you've done mixed signals, you're seeing different items on the screen and you're hearing numbers in your ears, and it can be challenging to learn how to do. So they're laid out, I would say, in how easy they are to learn. That being said, hey, every exercise in BrainHQ is adaptive. Once you've learned target tracker, as you may know, it's going to put as many things out there to track as your brain can keep track of. So in that sense, because each exercise adapts to your unique brain, hey, they're all going to be equally challenging in their own ways. But it is true that some are easier to learn than others. And that's why we tend to put those on the left. So you might try those first.
I learned something new today. So thank you very much, Henry, for that answer.
Fantastic. It's a great question. Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah. Okay. So William had a question. I'm not seeing any of the progress features on my dashboard except for levels. So I believe that's because this is going to be the default view when you first log into BrainHQ, but you can use this little bar graph icon in the top left to sort of toggle between your daily, weekly progress and whatever your weekly challenge is.
Yep.
So that's what this little icon in the top left is going to be good for.
That's exactly right. But you do need to do some training before any of these show up. So if you haven't trained yet today, you're not going to see any of these icons because they really just show you how much training you've done literally today. So if you still don't see them after trying that little toggle that Stephanie shows, just go ahead and do a first training level, pick an exercise or do a first level in the personal trainer, and then you'll see these progress tiles show up to tell you how much you've done so far today.
All right. And it looks like we have an interesting question from Reed, and I'll pass this one off to you, Henry. Can you talk about how progress is recorded? Is it stored anonymously, or is it part of studies that maybe participants aren't aware of? Can you talk about sort of privacy policies around progress?
Oh, sure. Your progress data is, of course, attached to your account because BrainHQ needs to know exactly how you did to pick the right exercises for you and give the right challenge for you. So, for example, we're logged in right now under my account where I do my brain training, and all that data is attached to my account because that's, of course, what BrainHQ needs to work. We don't enter any individual person's personalized data into any study, really at all. But it is fair to say that, hey, we have scientists here at Posit Science, and they ask questions sometimes about scientific data. For example, we might need to look at all of the data in Hawkeye, because maybe we need to recalibrate it. Maybe some levels are too hard or some are too easy. And when our scientists need to do that, we go through a very careful de-identification and anonymization process. So if we have a scientist who's asking a question about how to how to update the levels of Hawkeye, we carefully prepare a data set for them where we have a whole bunch of performance data, typically thousands, even millions of data points around people who've done Hawkeye, but no one's individual personal information is attached to that. So for example, let's say me, Henry, here, the CEO of Posit Science, maybe I scored 32 milliseconds on a Hawkeye level. If a scientist is going to look at that data, they're not going to see that Henry scored 32 milliseconds on a Hawkeye level. They're just going to see that somebody scored 32 milliseconds on a Hawkeye level. And when they look at that, they don't just see that, they see literally thousands or millions of other data points. So in that sense, the privacy is completely protected and preserved under all circumstances. Great question. Privacy is really important to us here at Posit Science.
Yeah, privacy and security is a top priority for us, absolutely. So I'm glad that we had that question and an opportunity to answer it. All right, so Richard asks a question. What is the significance of the asterisk beside the milliseconds in some of those tiles? So I have an idea of what he's referring to. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to the Hawkeye level selection screen. And you can see, if I zoom into the tiles a little bit, you can see that there is a little asterisk next to milliseconds. Now with most other publications, when you see a little asterisk, you're going to want to look for a footnote. So if we scroll all the way down, you'll see a little note here that says that the maximum difficulty or the peak value reached during a training level now counts as your score. Now, previously, the final difficulty value was your score. Now, this level contains at least one score that uses the final value, so the values shown may not all be directly comparable. All new scores are going to be peak values. So we did a change to how progress was recorded in BrainHQ a couple years ago now, and I think this is a leftover facet of that change. Is that right, Henry?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm actually glad someone asked this question because you're right. We made this update at least 2 years ago, and it's probably about time we can take rid of this asterisk. This was really to help people as we were making the transition understand what had changed. So we can probably get rid of it now. But as Stephanie said, we used to count stars based on your last score in the level, and now we count stars based on your best score as you did the level. But that changes several years in the rearview mirror now, so we could probably just simplify this a little bit. But you have sharp eyes. Great question.
Yeah, and to sort of expand on that change, to sort of visualize it. So for those of you that have done training, You may have, done really successful in a level and earned a 5-star rating, but then maybe got a couple of questions wrong after you've earned that 5-star rating. You're still going to get the 5 stars for that particular level. But the way that your percentile is calculated is going to be a little bit different. So stars are based off of your top score for the level, whereas percentiles are going to be an average of how you did across all questions in a level. So that's what the change was.
And actually, that takes us to some next questions about percentiles, if I may, Stephanie.
Yeah.
A pair of them that are a little bit related. We have Rory asking, hey, is my percentile score based on my most recent performance in each category? Or is it based on my performance history, where my poor initial results from a few months ago dragged down my percentile score? So that's a great question, Rory. And your percentiles are based on your most recent, and in fact, I think it's actually your best performance on each level in the exercise. And so what that means is that, hey, let's say you started off and you weren't so good at a level, and then you trained and you got better at it. I mean, first of all, good for you. That's exactly how brain training is supposed to work. And you will see that in this chart that Stephanie's showing right now. So for example, if you were doing an attention level, let's just pick any one of them. You would see, for example, target tracker. I'm currently in the 82nd percentile. But if you look at the summary graph in the upper left there, where it says attention, you can see I'm at the 80th percentile overall, and you can see that I've improved my percentile rank by 20 points. And what that means, exactly as you're asking, Rory, is, hey, maybe the first time I was doing the attention levels, I was getting around 60th percentile, but then I practiced and I got better, and now I'm getting around 80th percentile. So that 80 represents the best scores that I've gotten, and the plus 20 actually shows my improvement from, those initial results. So your history does not drag your percentile down. It's really a reflection of your of the best scores that you have gotten. And then related, I see that Joseph is asking, hey, do these percentile levels correspond to the general population? Or would people doing BrainHQ represent either a higher or a lower level to the general population? And that's a great question. The percentiles here compare you to everyone who's doing BrainHQ, who's around your age group. You can see I'm about 53, so I'm being compared to people who are about 53 years old. And actually, Stephanie, we can show this while we're at it. If you move my age down, why don't you move me down and compare me to 20-year-olds? If I want to compare myself to 20-year-olds, you see, well, not quite as sharp. I'm 53. 20-year-olds are very sharp. But maybe I want to feel really good about myself. And if you move that dial all the way up to 100, I can compare myself to 100-year-olds. And hey, I'm doing pretty good compared to 100-year-olds. So we can compare yourself in that way. But it is people who have come to us and done BrainHQ. So, Joseph, you might be asking, hey, how would people who've never done BrainHQ do? And that's a great scientific question. Maybe you should come join us on the science team. That's a question we're interested in figuring out as well. And in fact, there's an active science project right now where we are having people do BrainHQ levels who've done essentially no brain training at all before, to try and get a better sense of what the overall population is like. I generally think right now that you're probably comparing yourself to people who are kind of good, because they've typically come to BrainHQ, so they're interested in brain health, and they've also typically done some BrainHQ training. And so you're competing against people, so to speak, who have actually sharpened themselves a little bit already. But I hope that answers your question. You are comparing yourself to BrainHQ users. It's an active topic of research right now to figure out how to compare yourself to just the general population.
Yeah, fantastic question, and a really great thorough answer as well. All right, here's another question for you, Henry. I don't know if we know this off the top of our heads, but do you know how AQ is calculated?
Well, there's quite a bit of math behind it. There's
a lot of math.
That won't surprise you, because we have very smart scientists and mathematicians working on this. But in general terms, if you've never done a level before and you do it for the first time, you're going to earn a bunch of BrainHQ points, because you kind of had 0 for that level and now you've gotten some. So that's one way to earn BrainHQ points, is to do new levels. The second way is to come back and do a level again. So let's say we pick one of those Hawkeye levels where I only had 1 star. If I come back and do that level again and I improve from 1 star to, let's say, 3 stars, I'm also going to earn some BrainHQ points, because I'm showing BrainHQ that I'm actually pretty good at that level. So those are the two ways that you can earn them, doing new levels and improving your score at levels. Now, you might remember that's actually kind of the way that you earn medals as well. If you remember Stephanie's very helpful discussion, you earn medals by doing new levels and improving your score on existing levels. So there's a relationship there, and there's that relationship because, frankly, that's the best way to train your brain, is to do new levels and to improve your performance on existing levels. And so that's the answer to how you earn those points. And then they wear off all by themselves, slowly but surely. So, for example, if we go back to BrainHQ for a moment, and you see my scores are going down there a bit because I didn't train too much over the past month or two. And hey, that's because I earned those points, a month ago, 6 months ago, even a year ago. And so they're slowly wearing off unless I train more. So I hope that answers the question. Beyond that, there's a bunch of math that gets into the detail of exactly how many points you earn when you do a new level and exactly how many points you earn when you improve your score. So I guess what I'd say is, for example, when you see that my BrainHQ is 5,064, I think the best way to think about that number is, I started at 0, so I earned a bunch of BrainHQ points. My high score was probably somewhat higher than that, and I could get back to that if I current training. But I don't think you should think about that 5,064 in any other sort of particular way. There's not a way to transform that directly into an Alzheimer's disease risk, for example. It doesn't, if Stephanie had 8,000 BrainHQ points and I had 5,000, and I don't think that means a lot about the difference between Stephanie's and my brain. She's probably just done some more brain training than me, then good for her. It's really a score for you to count against yourself to make sure that you're going up or staying stable.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. All right, so Donna has a question here. Donna says, I'm fairly new. I never knew that there was a weekly challenge. I didn't know about clicking on those progress boxes, so new things now open up. Is there another place to learn what the weekly challenge is? Yes, so Donna, if you are subscribed to receive emails from BrainHQ, we do send out a once a week email called the Weekly Me that will tell you what the Daily Spark exercises for the week. It'll give you an overview of how your progress came together last week, but it'll also tell you if there are any weekly challenges for you to work on this week. So if you are subscribed to BrainHQ emails, you should be getting those automatically. If you maybe haven't for a while, or you haven't done training for a while, sometimes those emails don't get sent back out. If you want to shoot us an email, support@brainhq.com, we are also more than happy to take a look into that for you and make sure that you're subscribed.
Exactly. Great question. And it's a nice way to mix up your training a little bit. If you're looking for a little variety in your training, often that challenge is going to suggest a way to get some variety. For example, try a different exercise from each of the categories today. So I see another interesting question here, which is, oops, I've already scrolled away from it. There's Laura asking, is there a way to find out what the best score that can be achieved for each exercise is? And she says, hey, it seems to me that the best score varies. And that's a great question. So let's take a look at that, Stephanie. And maybe a way to look at it is we might compare two exercises that maybe a lot of people know, because they're some of the earlier exercises, which are Target Tracker and Hawkeye. So Target Tracker, as you'll remember, let's go to that progress tile page. Target Tracker, as you remember, you're going to track various objects moving around the screen. And of course, your score here is based on how many objects you track. So if you look at the first level that I did there, where I've earned 5 stars, as Stephanie pointed out, you can see that the first time I did this, I could track 4 objects shown in black on the left. And the most recent time I tracked 6 objects in green, or actually that was the best I think that I've done is 6. And right now I may have fallen a little bit on that. So in Target Tracker, the best score you can get is the number of objects. And honestly, Stephanie and Laura, it goes up quite high. I've seen people do 8 or 9 sometimes. Obviously not me, and good for them. But we always want to translate that raw score into stars. And you can see that I've earned 5 stars on that level. And that means that, hey, when I tracked 6 objects From target tracker's perspective, that's plenty. I don't need to come back and do this level of target tracker again anytime soon. Tracking 6 objects is a lot. Probably someone could track more than that, and good for them, but BrainHQ is not going to give anyone more than 5 stars. And so in that way, the stars tell you, hey, is there an opportunity to keep improving at this as far as BrainHQ is concerned? Or hey, I've gotten to 4 stars and that's enough for me, or maybe even 5. But of course, different exercises do have different scores. So let's look at Hawkeye again for a moment, if you don't mind. So Hawkeye, of course, as Stephanie reminded us, you're seeing all this flock of birds and you have to notice which bird is different. Now that's different than target tracker. We're not trying to track how many birds you can see. We want to know how fast your brain is. And in that sense, a lower score is better, right? If the birds have to be on the screen for 500 milliseconds, that's half a second, hey, that's kind of a long time. But if your brain gets faster, maybe the birds only have to be on the screen for 32 milliseconds, like just a fraction of a second. So for Hawkeye, we actually want a lower score. So if you look at that first level of Hawkeye that I did, you'll see in black, the first time I did it, the birds had to be on the screen for about 200 milliseconds. And then as I practiced, I got faster. And then I could see them when they were only on the screen for 32 milliseconds, just a fraction of a second. Now, BrainHQ tries to make that easy for me, right? In the sense that, hey, I've earned 5 stars here as well. BrainHQ thinks 32 milliseconds is awfully good, so it's given me 5 stars. I don't really need to train on this level anymore. So as an answer to your question, Laura, each exercise is scored a little bit differently, depending on whether that exercise is asking us to remember more things, where more is better, or whether that exercise is asking us to be faster, where a lower score is better. If you want to follow that level of complexity, good for you. The raw scores are shown right here. But hey, if you need it to be one step simpler, and most people do, just look at the number of stars you see on the tile, and that tells you how well you've done on the exercise compared to other folks who've done it.
Yeah.
Question.
I will also say we do occasionally have people ask us about like the upper ceilings for exercises, like how fast Hawkeye birds can appear on screen. So if there is a particular exercise you have a question about, again, feel free to email us support@brainhq.com. We're happy to look that up for you and then get an answer for you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll mention it because we're at it. I don't think we can demo this, Stephanie, but if you're doing an exercise, for example, like Hawkeye, of course, at the top of the exercise, you have a progress bar and it shows you have you earned 1 star, or 2 stars, or 3 stars, or 4 stars. Once you've earned that 5th star, you might be able to notice that there's kind of a solid black line on the right. And that represents the absolute maximum you can get to given like your computer and how BrainHQ works. Now, most people are never going to see that black line because that black line represents truly phenomenal performance. But if you're doing really well on an exercise and you've gotten that 5th star, just know that when you see that black line on the right, that's the absolute maximum performance you can get to. If you never see that black line, that's okay. You're probably still doing quite well in BrainHQ. But Laura, that might be the final answer to your question, which is that black line represents the top score you can get.
Yep. All right. So let's see. Oh, Henry, here's another question that I'm going to pitch to you. Why do some exercises only have 1 stage and other exercises have 10 stages?
That is a great question. The stages are really designed by the scientists who design the exercise. And in a way, the stages represent what are all the different variations we want to create in this exercise. So actually, can you go back to Hawkeye for just a second?
Sure, sorry.
No worries. The reason Hawkeye has so many stages is that, hey, there are a lot of things that we can change in Hawkeye to make the exercise slightly different in a way that makes sure your brain gets comprehensively changed. So for an example, in Hawkeye, there are many, many different comparisons of birds. And sometimes the birds are very easy to tell apart, and sometimes they're very hard to tell apart. The birds go on different backgrounds. Sometimes it's on a blue sky that makes it kind of easier. And sometimes it's on like a jungle background, which makes it really hard. Sometimes the birds are far away from the center and sometimes they're close. So there's really a lot of things to change about the exercise. So there's a lot of levels and a lot of stages. But if we look at another exercise and go back to the exercises, if you don't mind, and let's pick one where there aren't so many. So a good example is, let's scroll down a little bit if you don't mind. A good example is
What about here? It looks like there's
oh,
only two
here.
stages.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Good example. So in here, now maybe you haven't done this exercise, or maybe you have. The way here works is you're going to hear a sound, and then you're going to hear a bunch of sounds that are kind of close to that. And you have to pick out the one that matches the one that was first presented to you. So it's a memory exercise, but it's also a focus exercise because you have to ignore the distractor sounds. Now, in this case, yeah, honestly, there are only so many sounds that really make sense to do in this kind of exercise. And because there aren't that many variations of these sounds, there aren't that many levels, and so there aren't that many stages. So that's the full answer to the question. So hey, it takes longer to get through some exercises than other, but getting through all of them is helpful to brain processing in that way. Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, now I have an interesting question from Maggie. What data is used to determine, she says percentiles, but I'm assuming, or percentages, but I'm assuming she means percentiles. Does that data change as more people use BrainHQ? I think what she's asking is the percentile data that we use for establishing rankings, how often is that data updated? Is that updated in real time every time somebody completes a level, or do we take a snapshot of everybody's percentile rankings and then use that for X amount of time?
Exactly. That's a great question. And, we update them every now and then. I think the last time we updated them was maybe a year or two ago. And we usually put a little bit of an announcement in BrainHQ if we're going to update them, because everyone's scores might change a little bit if we update them. But an awful lot of people have used BrainHQ at this point. And that means that as new people come into BrainHQ, they generally kind of fit in the established patterns that we've seen so far. I think at this point, we've seen the people who are going to do the best, and we've seen the people who are going to do maybe the worst, and we've seen an awful lot of people in the middle. So, those underlying distributions aren't really changing very much at this point. So in that sense, they're not changing each time someone does a new level. And if the science team looks at this and decides, hey, we have some better data, we should update them. Hey, we're going to write a blog post about it. We'll send everyone an email. You'll see a notification when you check in here. But that hasn't happened recently. Good question.
Yeah. All right. I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. I do want to get to this one from Sharon, but other people have had a similar question as well. Under profile, there is a meter where you can click on easy, moderate, difficult. Should you go to tougher levels at some point and see how you do? So this is actually something that is a common misconception. So if we go to our profile page and then take a look under a section called training strategy at the bottom here, or personal trainer settings, you're going to see there's a training challenge selection here where you have easy, medium, hard, and expert. So the setting here doesn't actually change the difficulty of the exercises. Henry, do you want to maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll say in this question, I see a couple questions here around kind of how the personal trainer works and how it picks his exercises. And hey, the great news is, Stephanie, I think we're tackling how the personal trainer works in an upcoming office hours. We'll probably talk about that as we wrap up this one.
Yep.
But we'll answer one or two questions in a real summary way here. You're exactly right, Stephanie. The easy, medium, hard, expert, this doesn't change how hard the exercise is. The exercise is always going to adapt to your performance. What it does change in the personal trainer is, when does the personal trainer decide you're done with a level and you're ready to move on to the next level? If you set this at easy, you will make progress through the levels pretty quickly. And if you set it at expert, you're going to have to score really high on a level for the personal trainer to move on from it. So if you're looking to make a little bit faster progress and try new levels in the personal trainer, set this to easy or medium. If you're really looking to challenge yourself in the personal trainer, where it literally won't let you advance until you get a pretty high score, set it to hard or expert. For most people, I think this defaults to medium, and that's a fine score. But again, this doesn't change how hard the level is for you, because the only thing that changes how hard the level is from you is your own performance. And hey, BrainHQ is always going to try and push your brain in this way. And
yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I do see a couple other questions about how to get more variety in the personal trainer. I think we will talk about that in an upcoming office hours, but I think this is a perfect opportunity to say, hey, if you've been doing the personal trainer and you want to try out some more exercises, you want to get some variety, a great thing to do is go back to the dashboard, Stephanie. A great thing to do is to pick some new exercises yourself. So you can always click on Explore All Exercises. Oh, there's the personal trainer. Yeah. And take a look at your medals, right? You'll be earning these medals as you're doing the personal trainer. So if you've done a bunch of personal trainer sessions and you're maybe want to try some new exercises, come here, have a look to see, hey, where have you scored the highest? Maybe you want to double down on that, or come here and say, hey, where have you not earned any medals yet so far? Maybe you want to try those. So that's a great answer in general for the people who are asking about how to get some more variety. This is exactly designed for that, help you pick out some smart exercises. And we'll talk a whole lot more about this when we talk about the personal trainer in an upcoming session.
All right, awesome. So I think that's going to wrap it up. We're already a little bit over time, so thank you everybody for sticking around. Apologies if we didn't get an opportunity to answer your question directly, but if you do have any other questions, like I said, you can always email us. I'll go ahead and put up our contact information on screen. Our next office hours webinar is going to be taking place in May, and as Henry has alluded to, it will be all about the personal trainer. This is another webinar that we did last year, and it was so wildly successful that we are bringing it back this year and doing it again. Next month, we are also hosting a webinar about travel and the brain and how the effects of travel change your brain. So look out for an email from us probably the second or third week of March or April, excuse me, for that. Other than that, Henry, do you have any final takeaways that you want to share about progress?
No, great set of questions. I hope this helped people see all the ways they can track progress in BrainHQ. And hey, I always find it inspiring to think about training more as I see all the ways that I can see my performance in my brain and my BrainHQ scores getting better. So thanks to everyone for coming. Happy brain training.
Happy brain training, everybody. Thanks, Henry, for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.